If you could bitch smack one person with no consequences, who would it be and why? Olden boy said. Kid who used to work at my old retail job named Michael. It's like God spilled a person into a vat of toxic waste. Olden boy said. Let me just share a list of things about Michael. When he was hired, he had just graduated high school. His girlfriend was 15. One time they got into an argument and he kept telling me, you know that song Bad Guy by Billie Eilish? Well, I'm just gonna be the bad guy. It was painfully clear that he was in the wrong. He stole a lot and let other people steal a lot. Two of us nearly got fired until it became fairly obvious that it was him doing it. Would sit on register 1 and fart all day. So much so that there was a legitimately permanent fart smell at the register his entire shift and 2 full hours after he'd leave. Stole his granddad's credit card info and maxed it out on Fortnite. Ended up getting fired for a felony charge of stealing over $300 from his till. Worked in a repair shop owned by a regular in the store, known widely as an incredibly nice and patient man that only hired convicts. He got fired after 2 weeks. He was 21 years old. Edit, better wording. Olden boy said. Oh, 100%, that guy is actually so cool. He's told me that for every 10 guys he hires, he fires maybe 2 of them. He's pretty keen on giving people second chances, but he also understands that they have to prove they deserve it. Lilith's speech said. My stepfather, not for the years of abuse and disrespect to me and my brother, but because of how he's treating my mom now. They were having marriage difficulties, a home renovation and other issues at the same time, so he decided to fuck off to the UK for an undetermined amount of time with 2 weeks warning, leaving mom to run their business, handle the renovations and her own severe mental illness caused by their marital issues. He expected her to just put her head down and push through, and didn't speak to her for months. Now blames her for their marital issues, for her mental illness, his mental health problems, etc. Doesn't accept any blame and won't apologize, only gaslights, patronizes and attempts to manipulate. This woman spent 12 years raising his kids and hers, running their house, being too icy at his business, while closing her ears and eyes to his abuses to protect herself. She's not a saint, but FFS she doesn't deserve this. Thankfully, she's divorcing him. Edit, oh thanks, never got awards before. Guess I have to figure out how to use them now. From Anderson said. Whoever stole my pressure washer? I've been wanting a good one for years. I finally bought a decent model and it was stolen before I even got to use it on my own stuff. Edit, wow, this blew up. Thanks to everyone who gave me awards. I was just venting and wasn't expecting the outpouring of goodwill. For those asking about pressure washers, I'm no expert. If you have small jobs like washing your car and other small projects, I'd suggest an electric version. A turbo nozzle makes them a lot nicer to use. Project Farm has a good video testing several of the more popular models. https://yahoo.be/k5cmjvmlvv4. If you want to clean your driveway often, or anything remotely resembling our pressure washing porn, you really need a gas version. Pay more attention to the gallons per minute than the max pressure to GPM is probably the lowest. I'd go 3+ is better. I'm sure the pressure washer experts will probably be here to correct me, soon. Deleted, said. Back in high school I was scrapping some metal from an old building. I had worked all day compiling and sorting the stuff so I could pick it up the next day and take it to the yard. The next day when I went out there, someone had come and taken all the most valuable stuff and all I had was the roofing tin left. Thing is, this was in the middle of the forest. I have no idea how someone could have known I was out there doing that unless I was being watched, but I'd sure like bitch slap whoever took my damn catalytic converters. Adler 4290 said. Can we, in the same breath, recognize the inventors discoverers of insulin? When inventor Frederick Banting discovered insulin in 1923, he refused to put his name on the patent. He felt it was unethical for a doctor to profit from a discovery that would save lives. Banting's co-inventors, James Carlip and Charles Best, sold the insulin patent to the University of Toronto for a mere $1. They wanted everyone who needed their medication to be able to afford it. Edit, I agree OFC wholeheartedly that insulin meds should come down to next to nothing cost-wise. Kaspar said. My old high school band director. Has a 5-year-old son. Has a wife who is pregnant with twins. Proceeds to cheat on said wife with a good friend of mine, who was on the drum line's mom. Divorces wife and moves in with a friend's mom. Gets fired from the school and to this day, 4 years later, lives with my friend's mom and doesn't allow him to come back home. Everyone I know hates that slimy slug. He's 10 years younger than the mom, a fat arrogant loser who I'm plotting on popping his tires someday. Skullblika said. This is the way. A tiny dab of glue and a BB inside each of the valve caps, damn near undetectable to most people, and it'll slowly and surely drain every one of the tires every time the caps are replaced over the course of a day or two. You don't want to go fucking around stabbing a fully inflated tire. That's how you lose a face. 10 pounds of shredded rubber hitting your head at half the speed of sound makes for a bad day. New to this throwaway said. Why is it always Mills? My mother and father are both totally normal. Well, father was normal before cancer killed him. My girlfriend father is cool, but her mom fucking insane. Stressing over mundane details, creating drama where there need be none. Why is the world this way? Foxy Freckles 1989 said. My ex-husband. One solid slap across the face, knowing that this time I won't be the one getting hit. I'm sold. Edit. I was not expecting any sort of response to this, let alone such a big one. So, I'll let you all know it's been 4 years since I left him. I'm much happier, and safer, and am with someone who would never dream of hurting me. Thank you. COVIDLover13 said. Either one of the people who lied under oath when we sued my kid's school district, or the judge who believed them because her mom was a teacher and they tell the truth. Edit. Thanks for the hugs awards, I love those things. I'm not going to say what we sued for, don't want quite that much identifying info out in the world. I will say that the lies in question were about things teachers and administrators said in meetings my husband and I attended, but we had no proof. We were incredibly naive and had no concept of how easily people will perjure themselves when their boss is in the room and their job is on the line. Also, school districts have plenty of money for lawyer fees and insurance to pay settlements, so ultimate nothing changes. We persisted in hopes of instituting change and lost. Another family settled before going to court and I don't blame them a bit. Vacationing 81 said. My ex-husband and his most recent ex-wife. Yes, I know that's two but they go together. I wanted the divorce, which ultimately led to them getting together. I posed 0 threats. Yet, she still treated my kid 5-year-old son like shit. She wrote him horrible emails and said she was glad he didn't come over anymore because he was such a brat nobody wanted him there anyway. They also stood him up on Thanksgiving as soon as she gave birth to their son, within a year, because she wanted it to be just family. She got a job at the bank I use and accessed my accounts without authorization. She was fired. It was still my fault. Then she got a job next door where I worked. It was all super bizarre. Ex hasn't seen my son since he was 10 and he's now 25. They divorced years ago, she remarried, had 2 more kids and then became addicted to drugs, lost all 3 of the kids. Including my ex's son, he didn't take him either. I would absolutely be delighted to punch them both directly in the face. Ada, my son was 10 when he got the email. He was 5 when we divorced and ex started seeing the now ex-stepmother. Wackentardis said. My old boss. Fucker jokingly asked when I'd submit to him and made me feel like I was making a big deal about how the store was being run. I at least got to metaphorically bitch slap him by motivating 7 other coworkers including the assistant store manager to leave around the same time as me by just reminding them daily that they deserve better. 8 people quitting in a month was very fun to watch. Purple Fuzz 22 said. My 15-year-old self. My mom had just cheated on my stepdad, who raised me, and started dating this super crazy asshole alcoholic, that she ended up having a baby with 1/2 years later. Anyway, he kicked me out and my mom didn't resist, so I was 16 living in my car in Montana throughout the winter, trying to go to school and work. I ended up dropping out and working at a restaurant in town. I got my JED that year. Anyways, after that I had a lot of mental trauma I didn't know how to process and got caught up with the wrong crowd and started doing hard drugs. Then I started dating a drug dealer who was like 9 years older than me when I was 17. and also beat the living shit out of me, broke my nose 3 times, my ribs, and abused me enough on 2 occasions I thought I was going to die. He was literally telling me he was going to kill me those 2 occasions. He also raped me more times than I'd like to admit. Anyway, if I could slap anyone, it would be my young 15-year-old self. I wish I could tell younger me that I am smart, strong, and it worth it, instead of throwing my life down the drain due to abuse and drugs. I am 25 and sober and still trying how to be successful. Shit would have been different for me if I just believed in myself and avoided all the toxicity around me. Etherboo said, I'm late to this but fuck it. Rhonda. TLDR, fuck Rhonda. When I started at that company, Rhonda basically pretended that she was my supervisor, when she really was just a team lead with no managerial power. She couldn't write anyone up, she had no say in your review, she was just the one who made the ultimate yes/no on the team when management didn't need to be involved. Rhonda started off awesome. She talks a lot of shit about one of my coworkers that had been there a while and was the next senior person on the team, but I didn't exactly disagree with her. The person she was talking about was kind of a bitch and made a lot of really dumb mistakes. No big deal. This should have been a red flag, but I didn't think of this as a flag at the time. Then she left and I became her most senior team member. Suddenly I was the one being talked shit about. I found out she was taking photos of people when they weren't looking and posting them to Twitter talking shit. She started sending emails to our manager, CCing me, saying I was behind on tasks only for me to reply with an email attached that showed she gave it to Diane or Steve. Diane and Steve were alright, and half the time the task was done, she was just behind on her email. She'd crash my meetings, try to take over, then tell our manager I wasn't prepared because she decided to go off the rails. Etherboo said, the final straw for me, from her, there were big organizational problems, was when she assigned a bunch of tickets to me that were overdue that she had assigned, then sent our manager an email with screenshots from the tickets saying how I'm behind. It wasn't even worth my time to respond about how wrong she was. I searched for a new job and found one within a couple of weeks. My manager asked why I was quitting. I liked him, so I told him I can give him the truth or the professional answer, but I'd only give him the truth if he wouldn't hold it against me. He asked for the truth. I brought printouts of every tweet where she talked shit about me or someone I liked. Every stupid email. Notes from every meeting she crashed. He sat there dumbfounded, agreed it was a problem, and offered me 2 promotions to put me at her level so she wouldn't be above me anymore. I refused. A week later, another manager on another team completely unrelated asked me why I'm leaving. He says, who her? She's not your sup, why would you think that? I told him what's up. He offered me a promotion on his team as well as 6 months of training. I turned it down. In retrospect, I wish I hadn't. In the end, nothing happened to her, and the next week I had all my friends sending text messages asking me what I did because she had been running around cursing my name. She apparently turned red with rage every time something I worked on came up for months afterwards. Despite getting the last laugh, I'd still bitch slap her if it meant no consequences and maybe go for a second. More fluffy thing said. When we decided to remove our old ceiling texture, we asked a family friend who does drywall what they recommend we do. Turns out it was popcorn ceiling that someone tried to texture over. Their recommendation was eat the cost of drywall and just take the ceiling down and put a new one up. It'd be easier, cleaner, and take less time to do. They were right. We tried to scrape one room by hand, and after a week of scraping we gave in and just ripped the rest of the drywall ceilings out and start over. Fuck popcorn ceilings and shitty textured ceilings. Momo did 911 said. Right now, my mother-in-law. She posted an announcement of my baby's birth before I was even capable of doing so. Which wouldn't be so bad, if me and baby weren't fighting for our fucking lives. I went through 3 bags of Pitocin because I was bleeding out, which is agonizing. Meanwhile, the doctor had to reach inside my womb to remove flesh that couldn't come away, and my son was whisked away because he couldn't breathe. He had to be transferred to a children's hospital. She had the audacity during these events to say mom and baby are both doing great. She's always been so great, which makes it worse, honestly. It was like a slap in the face. Edit, baby and I are recovering relatively well. My older kids caught COVID at the babysitters while I was in the hospital, so baby and I are isolating in and in for a while. He's still incredibly fragile and my bleeding has increased, but I think things will be okay. The older kids are recovering very well from COVID. Erudicatera said. The guy who rear-ended me last year. Because he needed to text. I have a brain injury that affects every facet of my life. The bastard. Edit. Thank you for the overwhelming kindness, support, and slaps. I'd love to reply to everything, but can't keep up. Edit. If you'd like to be friends, I'm open to it. Just shoot a message and I'll reply when you ole. Processor cools down. I shouldn't have bested said. I'd slap my cousin. Last year while I was in the hospital, my cousin volunteered to take care of my bills and finances. He completely emptied my accounts, opened up credit in my name and spent thousands somehow, still not sure how, but he has now completely disappeared and no one can find him. After I filed police reports, I contacted the banks and creditors. Despite me never supplying my social security number or giving permission to do anything with credit, they all say I'm responsible because I gave him access to my fucking debit card via my house. Edit. Awkward sentence that implied I handed debit card directly over. To reiterate, he knew where it was if he needed to use it for paying bills, but I hadn't given him my PIN. He guessed it. Chicken Nugget said. Tikhon Nikolaevich Krennikov. That butt-kissing, bootlicking, piss-poor excuse of a composer knew precisely what he did to Dmitri Shostakovich during the Snovshchina of 1948, not to mention plenty of other Soviet composers. But let's not kid ourselves here, Shostakovich was clearly the main target, as if he hadn't been kicked around already with the Pravda denunciations of 1936 and gone through some serious shit afterwards, with everyone always breathing down his neck and tossing his reputation back and forth like the world's most traumatized hacky sack. Like, the poor man clearly needs a break. And then Tashinka, we're bringing out the diminutives here because I came here for no reason but to slander and disrespect, comes along and decides he's gonna kiss up to Stalin or Zhdanov or whomever the fuck and like. I get it. The Soviet Union was a difficult place to be in the late 1940s if you're a composer. People often ended up denouncing friends and whatnot out of necessity. But no, this little power-grubbing bitch goes above and beyond and just verbally shits on everyone to get ahead. Way more than would be required from him. And like, we have proof Shostakovich didn't like him, didn't trust him, etc. etc. And yeah, the poor guy had no fucking reason to. And Krennikov could have left it at that after Shostakovich died and could have been like, yeah, I had to say some shit about him and he didn't like me, which is understandable, but he goes out and says like, fucking, Shostakovich was grateful to me and in 1948, Shostakovich did not want for money and like, interviews and shit when here's the thing. During the 1948 Zhdanovshchina, Shostakovich was fired from both his conservatory positions in Moscow. Chicken Nugget said. In Leningrad most of his works were blacklisted, meaning he wasn't making money on them, and he and his family fucking sank into poverty for the time and it got to the point where he was forced to ask for handouts. And if you know anything about Shostakovich, you'll know how low he'd have to get before he started asking for handouts. The man was desperate and we get this information from second-hand accounts, letters, etc. And what does Krennikov say? In 1948, Shostakovich did not want for money. Bitch. Fucking fight me. I will personally learn fucking necromancy so I can bring this sleazy shitbag slut for Stalin back from wherever he's boiling and we can go one-on-one. He wasn't even that good of a composer anyway. And also there was the 1979 denunciation of 7 avant-garde composers from this hole that nobody asked for. Like, you could have just not done that 1979. Also, did I mention he lived until 2007? I shared the planet with Tikhon Krennikov for a good period of my life and that fact fills me with the rage I need to get out of bed in the morning. So yeah. He's getting slapped. Sour Blue 1992 said. The fucker who decided to turn or bypass, which was intended to be a faster way to get to the other side of town without having to sit in traffic, into the absolute most congested road in the entire city. How? They stuck 3 grocery stores, 82 outlet stores, 23 restaurants, and 2 gas stations all along a single quarter-mile stretch of road. The only way into this clusterfuck is through a single intersection which sits about 500 feet from the nearest interstate exit. So not only do we get to sit in local traffic, We also get to sit in the traffic imported from every small town in a 40-mile radius, because they only have a Walmart and a Dollar General probably. Then they built a third, unneeded sports complex for the high school a quarter-mile down the road from the clusterfuck, to create a second clusterfuck at peaks during holidays and outdoor sports seasons. This stretch of bypass used to take 3 minutes, maximum, to pass through, but during peak hours and holidays, it's taken up to an hour and a fucking half to get through. During every holiday season they have to have a couple of cops stand guard at the intersection to keep people from blocking it and creating gridlock. The icing on the cake? The fucking bypass now literally connects to my parents' road, which used to be this nice, quiet little back road in the country, surrounded by farmland and trees, but everybody wants to be close to the clusterfuck, so they tore all that shit up and now it's a mixture of cookie-cutter subdivisions and trailer parks. And absolutely nobody will abide by the speed limit while using the shortcut. It's not a fucking shortcut, it's a neighborhood. You're gonna run over my 60-year-old father getting the mail if you don't slow the fuck down and pay attention. So yeah, I've slapped the fuck out of whatever city planner came up with that bullshit idea. Out of all the reasons I'd love to move away from my hometown, the traffic is among the top 5. Plasma Trash said my mother. She's an abusive mother and wife who only contributes to my father's alcoholic problems by treating him like shit. She never does anything and buys everything she possibly can to satisfy herself. We need a new window? Nope, she buys herself 5 new dresses and then complains we don't have money. I go upstairs to my room, the dog makes a mess after I cleaned up the room and she comes running to freak out. My dad gets home from work after a stressful day. She gets mad at him for not wanting to do more hard work after having to listen to her complain about how tired she is from sitting down the entire day doing next to nothing, and there's so much more at it. Thank you everyone for the support. Just Sama Chick said. I know. Girls started more shit where shit had settled for the moment. The fight was why my sister took the invite to go out in the first place. She rarely went out. She rarely drank outside her house. She's spent 10 years in an abusive relationship with her baby's father and had just recently, 6mo, left him and started seeing the other guy. The girl jumped on a text thread between them from earlier and said some nasty shit while pretending to be my sister. When my sister got back to the table, another text from him came through in response to what the other girl had sent. My sister never realized the girl had sent what she did and assumed he was being nasty over something they had let go of for the few hours prior. This ignited another firestorm of rage and my sister was going home to fight it out. Such stupid shit all the way around. Apollo LOL said. TW, suicide. There are few people I hate, literally only one person. His name is G for unworthy privacy reasons. I had a distant friend in school named Ben, and G would constantly give him hell day in day out. On top of this, he was secretly battling depression. One day G destroyed a project that wouldn't help Ben graduate. On his birthday the next day, Ben took his own life. His funeral was held a week later and G showed up just to get out of school. Multiple people heard him say it. I almost beat the living hell out of him. I know it wouldn't help or bring Ben back, that's not the point. He has no remorse, no guilt, no concern for human life. Why should he get any himself? Disco Magic Party said. Probably the guy who broke into my place of work and was charging me from behind, knife in hand. Fortunately at the last second I saw him and somehow, can't stress somehow enough, threw something at him while simultaneously charging him. I sort of browned out but I went punch drunk and didn't stop until a coworker ran over and pulled me off. The attacker made the mistake of thinking this coworker was there to help him. He wasn't. He was there to help me. Meaning he proceeded to kick the guy in the face. I only suffered a laceration on my forearm from when I tackled him. Plus an additional 3 on my fist, one of which still had a tooth stuck in it. Why would I want to after all of that? Bitch slapped this man bitch. He is attempting to sue me for assault. Unusual Human said. Andrew Wakefield. He released a falsified study, attempting to show a link between the MMR vaccine and autism. His timing was amazingly bad. I truly believe his study was the impetus for widespread distrust of vaccines by many in our society for the past 20 years. It's spread so far and wide, and been picked up by conspiracy theorists. Now the fallout continues even though his study was redacted years ago. And if I could have any wish in my lifetime, I would additionally like to be allowed to have every single person alive who is now affected in any way, or simply distressed about the general, perceived safety of vaccines line up behind me and just give him a gentle tap or flick or similar. Esther Wu said, "My weirdo, effed up, drug-taking, perverted, abusive piece of shit ex, whilst in his care for a few hours each week, my daughter was abused by her children, left on her own or with said children whilst he went to get drugs, took drugs with her. They're generally a useless MF. Then tried to get my daughter and newborn son taken away from me. Social services were freaking useless and insisted that she still saw her dad each week. WTF. But agreed that I was a brilliant mother. My daughter got severe infections from the abuse and severe separation anxiety being away from me forward 20 years, lots of therapy and medication. She still has dreadful anxiety but is now happily married living with her husband, and with a 3-year son of her own. She's amazing. I also found out that he had made inappropriate advances towards my 12-year sister and 13-year cousin when he was 19. Perverted prick. Her dad is out of the picture and this was a long time ago, but I detest him, hate his guts. He has a lot to answer for. He still tries to weasel his way into her life but she's having none of it. He needs a huge punch in the ugly face. Yuck. Aspiring Guitarist 07 said, "My biological father. He's a nice person now but he tried to kill my mom once because she tried to stop him from drowning her dog, while she was pregnant with me, and he would have if my uncle wasn't there. He fed her rat to his snake. Fun fact about the rat, it was supposed to be good for her lizard but the lizard didn't eat it and they became friends. He never even tried to contact me for anything important happening in my life, and when I contacted him he rushed calls and ignored me. And now after 10 years he reaches out to me trying to be my dad and has the balls to call me his son. Also it's cause of his dumb ass that I don't get to see my 2 half-siblings anymore. Because he tried to cut contact with me for 10 years I didn't get to see my half-siblings who I really want to see me as an awesome big brother, and still haven't seen them, which sucks cause I think my half-brother and I would be really good friends. Though it would be nice to see my half-siblings. I have my brother, not half but full, and my 2 awesome half-sisters and a really cool stepdad." Abbreviations Top 2992 said, R. Hilaria Baldwin. She has got to be the most bitch-slappable person to ever come out of Spain, Boston. Between her cultural appropriation, her perpetuation of fake and toxic beauty standards via her disgusting pregnancy breastfeeding cosplay while actually outsourcing her kids then posting lingerie selfies claiming they are 24 hours after giving birth, her exploitation of the Baldwin children in relentlessly inappropriate SM posts. I'm choosing not to provide these receipts for obvious reasons. Her treatment of people she hires to raise her kids for her. Her claims that she is multi and fluid in the subsequent comparisons she delusionally makes between people calling out her culture grift to the struggles of the LGBTQ community, and her self-promotion as some type of fitness guru yoga instructor supermommy. I'd likely pull the classic surprise double bitch slap on Hilarious Frogwin. She is truly the grift that keeps on grifting. This is just the tip of the shitberg of the manure that is Hilly Vanilli. There exists so much more. Spiteful God once said my old boss who fired me, without following the procedure detailed in my employment contract, after I was exposed to COVID. I didn't get COVID, and when I found out I had been exposed I immediately got tested and went into quarantine in addition to following all other company guidelines surrounding the disease. I was fired several hours before I got my test results back. She also told all the other employees a false narrative about how I had broken quarantine and put other people in danger. I didn't leave my apartment for 5 days while I waited on the test results. I looked into suing the company for wrongful termination, but I didn't make enough to make it worthwhile for lawyers. Because I didn't actually get COVID, I was not a protected works according to the federal government. Apparently it's a gray area. The most they offered to do was send a write-up to the company. In the end I went over my boss's head and got a company to settle out of court. YB9017 said, my ex. We dated for 5 years and he ended up being married the entire time. I had no idea. We lived together. He would often go on business trips where I assume now he would visit his wife and other mistress. In the end, he proposed to me and his other mistress all while being married to his current wife. He wasted my time for 5 years. I was very young and innocent and he took advantage of me. Hate is a strong word but I hate and despise this man. This is one of those stories where I wish I could tell the community how horrible he is because he's a high-profile person, just in my area. But I'm terrified of how it would affect my professional image.